Okay, so I recently came across an article that made me really want to make this kind of video. And I've always wanted to make this kind of video because Korea has a lot of issues that's very hidden or suppressed, I guess. Like no one really wants to talk about it, especially, in Korea. Before I begin, I just want to say that this is my own opinion and from my own experiences from Korea. And just for context, I'm Korean American, 34 years old. I've been to Korea pretty much almost every year for a couple months, except for Corona. I've also lived and worked here for a time. So I'm just gonna give you guys my outlook on things here and why it's gotten so bad. I feel like people that are wanting to come to Korea or, thinking Korea is such a great place should watch this video. A big theme of this video is gonna be collectivism, and that is when society prioritizes the group over each individual. The education in Korea is very highly competitive. Kids are taught at a very young age that the only thing that really matters is their grades, and it defines them, and pretty much their friends, the other students in class are their competitor because, they are being ranked. And I believe they're like publicly ranked now where everyone can see like where you stand in the class, which probably is terrible for mental health. But I believe some schools have gotten rid of it and some schools still have that. Regardless, you kind of see the amount of pressure that Korea places to their youth. And it's no surprise that, suicide by the youth is always going up.
한국 학생들은 12년 동안 학창 시절을 수능을 위해서 보낸단 말이에요.
한국에 10 to 10이라고 아세요? 아침 10시부터 저녁 10시까지 학원에서 있는 걸 10 to 10이라고들 많이 하거든요. 그걸 아마 한국 학생들은 어린 나이부터 많이 겪는 것 같아요.
And academic pressure isn't the only reason for this increase. I know school bullying is also a major factor, and it's vastly underreported. Only like major incidents make the news, and the reason why it's so underreported is because the school cares so much about their reputation that teachers will usually dismiss a victim's claim. You have to realize that there are examples of like Korean netizens like driving people and like celebrities to commit suicide. The cancel culture here is pretty crazy. My thoughts is because Korea has this like age hierarchy system where younger people have to respect older ones and do things for them even though it's like they're a year different. In this kind of environment, people tend to bully more. Okay, so work culture in Korea. First off, I would say that if you're a foreigner, you're most likely gonna be overlooked for a promotion as Koreans are very xenophobic. Even with me, as a Korean American, I would get overlooked for a Korean national male. Korea is known to have the highest pay difference between men and women in developed countries. The amount of opportunities for advancement is very low for women. And I believe in like company structure of who gets the best opportunities. It's Korean national male, then like an overseas Korean male, then a Korean woman, and then foreign men, and then foreign woman. And the reason why national male and overseas Korean male is kind of different is because of the army. And there's a whole issue with this because, it's not fair that someone like me does not have to go to the army. So a lot of companies place more value into males that have gone to the Korean army. To get a little more deep into it, Korean has these like set standards where there's a preference for light-skinned over dark-skinned, and the best opportunities are for good-looking people, and you also have to be tall, skinny. Korea is a very superficial country. That's why you see plastic surgery is so prevalent here. Now, Korea's age hierarchy system is very common in the workplace, but it's a little bit different. For example, if you join a new company and you join a new team, right? And depending on who joined last becomes like the newbie or the maknae in Korean, right? So age doesn't really matter. And Korea has these like 막내 responsibilities.
이미지 젓갈 빨리 갖고 안 가네. 너는 그치 하나밖에 없어.
사실 막내는 노제인데. 그래. 노제야, 네가 해야지.
And suddenly you're responsible for making coffee or making copies for people or even cleaning after people after lunch or something. Your job responsibility is basically an intern to everyone until someone else new joins the group, and then those responsibilities are transferred over to them. Mind you, for people that are trying to get their first job, a little bit of advice is if a company emphasizes being a team player or being part of a family, just run. And another piece of advice is your coworker is not your friend. It's a whole different kind of relationship from friendship. Keep your personal life and your professional life separate, especially in Korea, because remember, they're very highly competitive and they'll do anything to try to get ahead of you. Let me start off by saying Koreans are generally not open to strangers. For example, if you hold a door for someone, usually what happens is they're not gonna even acknowledge you. They won't even nod or smile. They'll just like walk through or something like that. And just know that it's their culture. They aren't trying to come across rude. I think it's because growing up, they're taught not to make eye contact with older people. And I guess that just transitions to strangers because there's a whole honorific system here where people you don't know, you speak in like a formal way, and people you do know or are close to, you speak in an informal way. There's also impolite and polite versions of that speech, and it can be confusing, but naturally they don't meet strangers' eyes or say hello. Just know that. Okay, so in Korea, your best chances to meet people are usually in a group setting, be it extracurricular activities, church communities, work groups, some type of like, I don't know, hobby group, golf club or whatever. The things you see in K-dramas where you randomly bump into someone on the street or in a cafe is generally low in all cultures, but more so in Korea. For meeting people to date or hook up, it usually resorts to nightlife, which is probably the same for most countries and cultures. I'm not sure if any other country has like the hunting bar culture like Korea does. For context, hunting means picking up women. And the problem with this is people generally associate the reason for you coming out to bars and clubs is to hook up. If you've ever been to Korea late at night when the bars close, you will probably witness women being dragged by men to taxis and whatnot. And what's crazy is that it's totally normal to locals.
He put his hand under my shirt and under my bra, and he was like pinching me and cupping, and then he put his hand in my pants. That he grabbed my hand and I tripped coming out of the soju booth and I fell on the ground, and like the staff were there and they just looked at me.
And the foreign guys that's trying to snag a Korean woman, first of all, you're gonna need to know Korean. And a majority of women you meet on dating apps, they're most likely wanting to learn English from you. I know a few girls that would do that to practice their English and get a free meal, so just be aware of that. Foreign women looking for a Korean guy. If you meet them in a nightlife setting or on dating apps, I would say like 9 out of 10 times, they just want to hook up or have a one-nighter. If you go out and see random guys like standing around, asking you if you want to drink with them or eat with them, and you might be young and naive, but they expect something in exchange for free food and drinks, and it's not high fives. And with this kind of culture and behavior, it's no surprise that sexual assault is ever so increasing in Korea. These rates are probably double or triple with the amount of unreported cases.
According to the latest data provided by the Korean Statistical Information Service, in 2020, more than 2 million foreigners resided in Korea, over 909,000 of them women. but the number of calls to the Tanuri helpline in relation to sexual assault last year was 55, just 0.5% of the total calls received, an indication that such crimes are vastly underreported.
And I had to go into deeper research because you can't find a combined list of sexual incidents amongst developed countries. So I had to go through each type of sexual violence, such as tape, domestic abuse, illegal filming, which, by the way, Korea is #1 in. And it's such a big problem that the government has their own spy camera detection team where they look for cameras in public places. Also, a fun fact is if you're on a Korean Wi-Fi or on a Korean carrier, there's a reason why you can't mute the camera sound on your phone. But upon doing some research, Korea is near the top in sexual violence. And you have to remember, in countries like the United States, where the offender's race or ethnicity is spread out, Korea, on the other hand, 90% of Korean nationals are the ones committing the assault.
Basic thing like sexual assault on the subway is a major problem here for foreign women. I have had tons of friends that constantly tell me this Ajushi grabbed her bum on the subway and this one tried to take pictures of her. The whole hidden camera and spy camera things, like that it's a major concern here.
So my curiosity got the best of me, so I had to do some more research. And initially, I thought because sex is such a taboo topic that guys might have this suppressed sexual aggression, or maybe there's a link between military service and sexual assault cases because Korea has mandatory enlistment. But I found out that it usually starts with the education system. Again, this is just my opinion on the issue, and this is the one that makes the most sense to me. Going from this article, sex education is a crucial factor in how society views the power dynamics between men and women, and the sex education curriculum currently in place in South Korea perpetuates violent stereotypes and sexist attitudes. Sex education in South Korea is segregated between female and male genders, one not learning about the other. Much of the content in the curriculum focus on sexual assault teaches the girls that they are at fault for any and all sexual violence committed towards them, while downplaying the role men and boys play. Few adults in the education system take crimes seriously, especially when they occur in school. Many dismiss the actions of student assault and often silences the victims, too concerned about the school's reputation. When action is not taken against young offenders, it perpetuates the notion that it is okay to commit such crimes. It encourages these actions since they are only of natural impulse. And this continues to build up into adulthood. Korea's stance on sexual crimes is a joke. Everyone remembers the Burning Sun scandal. Those offenders got, I believe, like 5 to 6 years. And if I remember this correctly, this is when Korea's Me Too movement was like popping off then. And if that didn't happen, I'm pretty sure the offenders would probably get a max of 1 or 2 years.
진짜 생각도 못한 곳에도 있고 진짜 안 갈 수도 있다고 생각하는 사람들도 가는 사람이 많고 진짜 셀 수 없이 많은 것 같아요.
많지 않을까? 제가 약간 부천 이런 데 약간 모여 있는 데 가봤는데 약간 그런 게 많아서 저도 놀랐거든요.
오면서도 몇 개 본 것 같아요. 오면서도 본 것 같아요. 그래서
많다고 생각하시나요?
이게 전국에 한 10만 개 이상은 되지 않을까.
10만 개요?
예, 그 정도는 되지 않을까.
제 생각에는 거의 편의점만큼 있지 않나.
정말요?
예, 뭐 그러지 않을까.
No one really talks about the amount of prostitution here. If you're Korean or you look Korean, you've probably been approached before for these services or seen flyers everywhere. If you just walk around Korea, you've definitely passed by these hostess bars. They usually lead underground or nearby a hotel, and pretty much the name of the place isn't on the internet. And even the average karaoke bars that you probably visited are into those services. And if you're a woman in Korea looking for a job in nightlife, you will probably be introduced to something like this. At first, it might sound innocent, like you go party and make money, but usually it ends up darker than that. Here, these services are really normalized, and even like it's an open secret. Like even the cops know. And in my opinion, why most of these women get into this kind of stuff is first, employment for women and job advancement is just terrible here. And 2, mountains of debt, which comes to my next point. Koreans are so in debt.
South Korea may be an economic powerhouse, but its households are up to their necks in debt. Koreans use credit cards more widely than anyone else in the world.
This documentary is 2 years old, and I'll link it below, but now as of 2022, Korea is one of the highest in all developed countries, and I thought the US was bad. Most have to do with Korea's materialistic and superficial culture. Going to the article that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Korea is #1 spenders in luxury goods. And some key points of this article. Only 22% of Koreans say it is in bad taste to show off pricey clothes and accessories. Generation MZers account for almost 40% of total luxury sales in 2021. Displaying wealth is acceptable and sometimes encouraged in Korean society. More than 60% of Koreans believe that it is fairly important or very important to be seen rich. In a groupist culture like Korea, people care about how others view them. And in my experience, yes, Koreans care way too much what other people think about them, and they'll spend large amounts of money to keep up appearances. That's why I tell anyone that comes to Korea and envies how well they dress and how expensive their clothes are, that they're swimming in debt. And let me finish off this video because I feel like it's way too long. Korea has the highest gap of gender pay, has enormous academic pressure, high rates of sexual violence and household debt, which leads to being #1 in and with a collectivist, groupist kind of culture, change doesn't happen so often. If the collective society doesn't listen to the minority, issues might be brought up, but bills will not be passed. I honestly wish that Koreans would change their view of how much they care about how others view them. Korea being the unhappiest country in developed nations is not a coincidence.